Welcome to Heart with Keisha B, the podcast that focuses on the journey of grief, healing, and overcoming unforeseen circumstances. Whether you're dealing with loss or life challenges, this is a podcast that you don't want to miss. I am your host, Keisha B. So take a deep breath, open your mind and your soul, and sit back as we embark on this journey together. Hello, everyone. We're going to give everyone some time to come on into the room, into this virtual space of Heart to Heart with Keisha B. Well, I'm going to promise you right now is that we're not going to start this show until I have at least 15 people in the room. So I see we got 3. So whoever these 3 people are right now, I'm going to challenge you to tag someone, call someone, scream in the other room and say, jump on this live right now, because I am here to tell you, right? All of my episodes are maybe a little bit biased, but all of my episodes are empowering. And this one right here, right? It's empowering for so many different reasons, but I'm not going to even talk about it right now, right? Because I still need 11 more people to jump on this here live before we get started. So I'm going to just go ahead and sip me a little bit of lemonade while we wait on y'all. All right. We still need some folks to enter into this live space this afternoon or evening. All right. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Because we definitely don't want to miss anybody today. Because this is for everybody today. It's for everybody. But in the meantime, Tracy, how you doing over there?
I'm doing well. When I moved to Atlanta, they told me it was hot Atlanta, but it's been cold Atlanta here for the last 2 weeks. But I'm doing good. Other than that, if that's the only care I got to worry about is the weather, then I'm doing very good.
You're doing well. As you know, here in West Virginia, we've experienced a lot of snow. Right? We ain't had this much snow in quite some time. But let me pause for a second, Tracy. This challenge may be working. We got about 8 viewers right now. We need 7. Oh, we got 9. We got 9. So whatever y'all doing, holla, scream, kick, call, text, whatever you got to do, put them folks in this room. Because like I told y'all, I am not starting my live episode this evening until I have at least 15 people on this stage. Right now I got 9. So call, text, scream, whatever you got to do. 12. All right. We're getting there, Tracy. We're getting there.
They coming.
3 more people. They're coming. They're coming on in the room.
Yes,
come on down. As they say, the price is right. Come on down. Because this is something that you ain't gonna want to miss, right? I ain't got no prizes for you, right? I'm not Pat Say Jack. I think that's Wheel of Fortune. I ain't none of them people. But the prize I got for you is Tracy, right? The message Tracy's about to give y'all, I'm telling y'all, is very inspiring. Again, we need a few more people. Once we get these people in the room, we'll go ahead and get started because I don't want to waste anybody's time.
You said you got 12, Miss Sampson said.
We got 12. Tracy, we got 14. We got 14 and 1 heart. So whoever that heart is, I need you to call somebody up, text somebody, scream to the other room. Whatever you got to do, get that last person up in here so we can go ahead and start this live episode. Because if you know anything about Dunbar, West Virginia, the Smoot Avenue.
That's right.
We got somebody right here from Smoot Avenue gonna talk to us. Tracy, guess what? We about to get started. Tracy. We got 16 people. I'm not sure what's happening, but let's not stop at 16. We just gonna go ahead and start the episode, right? But let's not stop at 16. Whoever you call, text, challenge them also to call and text somebody, because right now we're about to start Heart to Heart with Keisha B. As you all always know, every week, just about, I do a bonus episode, and it's normally on Sundays at 7:00. And so as I was preparing my mind for this week of what message do people need to hear? What is it that I think sometimes it's not told? Sometimes we look at folk and we think we know folk, Or sometimes we look at people and we tend to judge people and assume because they look good.
Yeah.
Right. Because Tracy's a beautiful woman, right? Because they look good. We think we always know that they feel good. And that's not always the case. And so today I brought Tracy here to talk about who Tracy is. And if you're from West Virginia, you're from the two, you're from West Virginia State, you're from South Charleston, you're from Dunbar. I don't know what elementary you went to, Tracy, right? Whether it was Ford or whether it was Dunbar, Ford Elementary, you know Tracy. But here's my real question. Do you really know Tracy? Or do you know the Tracy that you want to know? So because you may not know Tracy, I brought Tracy on here today to tell us who Tracy is and tell us a little about ourselves. So Tracy, thank you for gracing us today with your presence.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I mean, I feel blessed to even be considered. So thank you for having me on this platform. And I hope, well, I pray that people walk away not only with knowing me better, but being able to apply some of the nuggets that I've learned on my journey to their journey today.
Right, right. Thank you. So for our guests, whether you are returning guests or whether you new guests, let me tell you a little bit about what Heart to Heart is. Heart to Heart with Keisha B. So Heart to Heart with Keisha B was started because I was at a place in my life that I needed some love, right? I was at a place in my life to where some days I didn't know if I was coming. Some days I didn't know if I was going. And I had to find a way to get what I was going through out. And the only way I knew to do that was to talk. And then as I began to talk, I realized that it wasn't just my message that needed to be heard, but there was other people out here in the community that also needed to be heard as well. And so what Heart to Heart focuses on is grief, healing, and overcoming unforeseen circumstances. And so that is why Tracy is here today, because in some of that, right, whether it's grief, whether it's healing, or whether it's overcoming unforeseen circumstances, Tracy is going to shed light with us today. And so Tracy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, right? Because this show, I started, but it ain't about me today. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you.
No, good afternoon, well, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Tracy Palmer. You know, in a nutshell, I always say I don't look like what I've been through. I don't look like what I've been through, but what I do know is that he wastes nothing. God wastes nothing. Your journeys are not your own, and the things that you go through are to inform you later or to help somebody else later. And so whether I'm talking about Smooth Avenue, my fashion platform, or I'm talking about West Virginia Black Excellence, which is my nonprofit, first of all, I'm a servant, but I realize that he wastes nothing and that everything that I've gone through is not wasted. And so for me, that's the message I want to get out for everybody that is watching, whether you're a Smooth Avenue cousin, a Heart to Heart cousin. I want you to be encouraged. Because, you know, we live in a world right now where we get a lot of sound bites of negativity. And I want you to hear something that Keisha and I may say that'll encourage you and be like, you know what, I'm not alone. Because that's the goal. Mm-hmm. The enemy likes to make us feel alone. Mm-hmm. When you feel he gets you alone, the next thing you know, you feel like you're feeling depressed. Next thing you know, you don't have any hope. And that is the tactic of the enemy. So I hope today that somebody's able to walk away with a little nugget that can just get you down the road one more day. And so that is my goal. I am a girl from Smooth Avenue. Smooth Avenue is a real place. So let me just say that. Although Smooth Avenue is the name of my fashion business, it is a real place. I always say I grew up at 116 Smooth Avenue. Erica grew up at 120. For those who don't know, Smooth Avenue is a little 2-block avenue in Dunbar, West Virginia. Yes, I said Dunbar, West Virginia. For those who don't know, for those who aren't familiar with Dunbar, it's a little, I would say, Paquito town in West Virginia. And I grew up there. But what I love about Smooth Avenue in Dunbar, West Virginia, is that the neighborhood raised me. The neighborhood raised me. When I was wrong, they corrected me. When I was right, they celebrated me. But some of my joys and pains came from Smooth Avenue. And so I'm just here to share my journey from being on Smooth Avenue into now being in Atlanta and being an entrepreneur and just delving in this philanthropy world.
Yeah. So Tracy, take us back to Smooth Avenue. Right. Of course, I know you. I went to school with you, right? But there's still parts of Tracy I don't know. So when I first met Tracy, I was in 11th grade. Tracy was a senior in high school, right? So here I am, this young girl transitioning into this school with folks whom I don't know. And so, Tracy, I want you to take us to those days of high school, right? Take us to what did Tracy look like in high school? Who was Tracy? And maybe what are some obstacles that Tracy dealt with in high school outside of just academics?
Absolutely. I will say this. So I grew up in a two-parent household, which was an anomaly on Smoot Avenue. It was an anomaly in Dunbar, right? So I was
Mm-hmm.
probably, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 other families on Smoot Avenue that had a mother and a father in the house, right? So Smoot Avenue, for those who don't know, I want to paint a picture. Smoot Avenue is 2 blocks long, but down Smoot Avenue there was projects. There was a set of projects on either side of Smoot Avenue, and then there were houses throughout. But so we were considered, I would say today, as I look back on it, the Joneses, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
had a home. I had 2 parents in the house, I had 2 cars in the garage. Both my parents worked. I was a cheerleader. I was good in school. I went to church 3 or 4 times a week. My grandmother lived next door. But what many people didn't know is I learned at an early age how to hide in plain view.
Mm.
I hid in plain view because what people didn't see, they saw this White House. We literally lived in the White House with a fence around it.
Mhm,
That when you shut those doors, when you took off the designer clothes, because my father was big on image, right? He was big on
mhm,
image and keeping up with the aesthetics of things. So when I left and closed those doors, took off this designer clothes, I entered into pure, I'm gonna call it pure hell, because
mhm,
from the moment my mother and father shared a space together, it was arguing and domestic violence. And I saw that growing up my whole entire life. And so high
mhm,
school was not any different than that. And so when I came out of those doors, put on those designer clothes, then I smiled and I hid in plain view, and I was perfect in the eyes of many. And Erica
mhm.
always says to me, yeah, you guys had everything, but did we? And
Right.
so my dad was good at camouflaging what was really going on. But what I learned, a good thing I didn't learn, one of the things that I learned is how to hide, right? And how
Mhm.
to perfect imperfection, if that makes any sense. So
It
I
does.
knew how to say the right things. I knew how to, tuck my shirt in and make sure everything was in place. I knew how to do all of those things. But as I look back on it, it was really bondage and a weight that was just,
Mhm,
it was just constantly being added to my shoulders. I found relief. So again, my grandmother lived next door. So I always say on Smoot Avenue. My grandmother lived at 120 Smoot Avenue. I lived at 116. Erica lived, I think, like a 112. 112. Sometimes she lived with my grandmother. So there was aunts and uncles all down the street. Um, but I found solace, even though I had a big family, I found solace in church. And so I would go
mhm.
to church with my grandmother. It's so funny as I look back on it, the things you are ignorant to, but is God wastes nothing. He wastes nothing. I remember my
Right.
mom would just argue, 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 argue. And I found solace in church. And so I would go back in my room. And for some reason, I don't know where it came from, Keisha. I had this little 45 record player in my room. I don't know who gave it to me. I don't know where it came from. And it had maybe 5 or 6 albums. And it was like Andre Hawk, I think it's the Hawkins family. So I had these
Mhm,
gospel albums that whenever my mother and father started arguing, I would just put those records on and I would try to play them as loud as I could so that I didn't have to listen to the arguing. But again, he wastes nothing. And so that's the beginning of Smoot Avenue. And I think
I'm doing good other
hiding
than that. If that's the only care,
hiding in plain sight when so when I met my son's father, because I was
I gotta
hiding in
worry
plain
about is the
sight,
weather.
and he saw me, right? Because I was
mhm.
I was popular. I was popular because I had all the makings of being popular. People fall in love with the outside, right? I had all the
Right.
makings. I was a cheerleader. I played basketball. I was always voted to be on the homecoming court. So I was really popular. But there was a lot missing, and so I won't go so far in the story. I'll hold some. I'll leave them up to your questions.
Yeah, so Tracy, as you were talking, I actually am letting our audience know now that if there's any listener out here who has any questions, right? Please feel free to put those in the chat. I am watching the chat as we're talking. But if you also wish to come on to the live to personally ask questions, we can also we also have the capability of doing that as well. So if you ever see my face looking down, it's because I'm actually reading messages. And so Tracy, a lot of what I heard you say, right? I know this was in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, as crazy as that may seem, right? Because now we're in 2025, but there's still people today that are going through what Tracy just described, right? There's still kids today that are in school and they may look perfect, right? They may have on the freshest J's, they may have on the freshest outfit, but when that door closes, they're hiding behind banisters, watching and listening to their parents argue, right? Or they're in their room and they're gaming. They got their system up as loud as they can because they just don't know how to deal with
So
all the things that's out of their control, right? And so as we see, this is nothing new, right? This is nothing old. This is something that we are still dealing with today. And so again, I'm still going to challenge our listeners that if anything that Tracy has said right now has touched you and you know somebody, I'm going to ask you to bring them onto this live today, right? I feel like right now we in church, and so I hope I don't offend nobody, but I've been led today, and I'm going to take this podcast in this episode, in this interview, wherever God should take us to, right? And so, Tracy, you talked a lot about your son, well, your boyfriend. Was there a point in that someone else was brought into the dynamics of you and your relationship with your boyfriend?
Listen, so my son's father, and so I'm going to be very transparent. So I only know how to be transparent. That's just who I am. My Smooth Avenue cousins know that I'm very transparent. So my son's father. So again, I lived a very sterile life outside of domestic violence, and so my son's father came into my life at a time when the domestic violence was at its height. So normally I probably wouldn't have entertained him. So for those who don't know, from where I'm from, my son's father, he's no longer with us, but my son's father, he was the local dope dealer. Can we just, I'm just put it in plain terms. He was the local dope dealer. He was known in infamy for being, the local dope dealer. So when he approached me, right, I'm like, no, I'm a church girl, right? I'm a church girl. I do this thing, homecoming queen, good grades. So he pursued me for over a year before I even gave him time of day. But that's just like how the enemy works. When you are at your most vulnerable, then that's when he gets access. And so during that time, my son's father, again, like I said, he was a dope dealer. I lived in the 2-parent household, and it was good at first, right? It was all good at first, right? I got all this attention that I wasn't getting at home because, they were too busy fighting to be concerned about us, right? And so he came in a time with a lot of attention, all the things that you want to hear as a young woman. You're beautiful. I love your style, all those things. And before I know it, I was knee deep in a relationship. And, it was all good at the beginning. It was all good at the beginning. It's always good. He was a dope dealer. Really, I remember my father said, don't ever let a man buy you anything. Because if he buys you anything, that's just a doorway, a gateway. And so for probably a year, I didn't let him buy anything. And you'll appreciate this, Keisha. We were going to Zeno's. For those who don't know, Zeno's is like a pre-sorority, right? When you're in high school. We were going to Zeno's in New Jersey, and I needed this hat because we all wore a outfit to step in. And I needed this hat from Gap, and he bought me that hat. And it's like after that, it's just like it was a progression. And so maybe about a year or so into the relationship, I remember I was at his home. I was sitting on the porch. So he lived on kind of like a brownstone, for like a better word, on Maryland Avenue on the west side. And I just remember sitting there. And for some reason, he got really angry. And he pushed me off of that porch. I was sitting, and I mean, we're talking about 6 feet off the ground, maybe. I was sitting on the ledge, and he pushed me off of that porch. And I remember like, what just happened? what just happened? This is the guy that I'm in love with. He's lauding me with all this attention. He's taking me away from the noise at home. And he pushed me off the porch. And I got up, came up the steps, concrete porch at that. I came up the steps, and I think I was in shock. And I don't even remember my reaction, but at that moment, that was a pivotal moment. That was a moment where I should have left, but because of the noise that was going on at home, I stayed. And when you're entering into a domestic violence relationship, you always have that pivotal moment. And for me, that was the pivotal moment where I stayed. It's almost like he was doing a heat check. Like he was doing a heat check to see, is she love me enough to stay? Because he had his own demons, right? And so that was the beginning of the domestic violence. And so I just never forget that. And from there, of course, it escalated. And so if you know anything about domestic violence, it's those ebbs and flows. It's those pushing you off the porch to those I love you and kissing you on the back of the bus, when you're coming home and buying you Valentine's gift. It's ebbs and flows to make you justify the push off of the porch.
It's that honeymoon phase.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase. And I was I was knee deep. I was in love, right? This was my first true love. It's my first true love. And he pushed me off a porch. And that was the beginning of the violence that I experienced for the next 10 years. Just the beginning.
So Tracy, when you look back at your teenage life, right? What would be your message? Let's first talk about what would be your message to that young teenager today.
I think the message that I would have is those pivotal moments. When you get those red flag moments that in your guts are wrong, listen to your heart, listen to your spirit. I call it's the Holy Spirit for me. Listen to that. I don't know if I had the words for it then, but listen, because I knew at that moment I should have left. Right. And so I say, listen, I know that's not always easy because sometimes that noise at home, you're okay, noise at home, noise with him, noise at home. But I just challenge that young woman, that young man, because it happens both ways, to listen. When you get to that fork in the road, listen to that pivotal moment. Also, I had a lot of people in my life. I will say this. A lot of people from Smooth Avenue, a lot of teachers, a lot of administrators that watched. And I don't think they knew exactly what to say. But they watched. I mean, there were, as I look back on it, there was people that really could have intervened. Real honest, true talk. If my father would have said, Tracy, enough, I would have stopped. But he never said anything. And so I encourage people around those, in addition, because you need strength from others. You don't always have the strength, of your own to be able to make those decisions. I would encourage others as they're watching. They may not listen to you, but they are listening to you, if that makes sense. I'll never forget, I was walking down, if you know anything about Smooth Avenue is in what we call the bottom. It's West Dunbar. It's the bottom. It's about maybe 7 or 8 blocks that cover West Dunbar. I remember walking my son's father, maybe to the bus stop or something. I don't know. Remember where we were walking to. And as I was walking back, my home church is on the street that you walk through the bottom. And I remember seeing one of the mothers of the church. I was walking back and I'm sure we were arguing. She walked arguing. I'm on my way back going home. And she said to me, I'll never forget, you're better than that. She said, you're better than that. But I didn't feel better than that.
Of course.
And at the moment, I felt like she was judging me. But if she would have just took me and squeezed me and said, baby, I've been through something, she would have just imparted some wisdom into me. It may have changed my trajectory. But again, I know God wastes nothing. And my experience allows me to be able to sit on this platform and hopefully inspire somebody else that is going through that. But that is what I would have desired. If my dad would have said something, that lady would have said something, that mother of the church, or even if my mom would have said something. But during that time, she went silent because she was dealing with her own domestic violence.
Right.
So she didn't really know how to address it. It wasn't until the broken blood vessels in the eye, the scratches on the neck, the ripped, like jeans because, you fell somewhere, the torn shoes. I remember Shawnee Park is one of the main places that everybody gathers on Sunday in the bottom. And I remember like yesterday, so the courts would be filled with everybody be watching basketball. Sundays at Shawnee Park, it was the place to be. I remember literally having a knockdown, drag down fight with my son's father at Shawnee Park. Knockdown, drag down, and then I have to walk home limping because I broke my shoe. And I walked into the house and my mom didn't say anything because she didn't know what to do.
Right. Tracy, you said something when you said the church lady said you're better than that. And you said you didn't feel better than that, right? And as we know, those are some of the effects of one that's in a domestic violence relationship, right? Because initially it starts out, it's emotional, right? You're emotionally brought down. You're emotionally made to feel like nobody else wants you. I'm the only person that wants you. I'm going to honeymoon you to death. I'm going to buy you all this stuff, right? And so once you're there, then it becomes the physical side. And so, like you say, I think it's very common that emotionally you're already made to feel like nobody else wants you. So when somebody else tell you you're better than that, you're like you said, you're thinking, I can't be, right? I can't be because if I was A, B, C, D, and E. Right. And I share this because again, our numbers are going up on our viewer side. And I know that there's somebody right now that may be watching this. And I'm just asking you that if you are an individual that's going through anything like this, that please listen to what Tracy is saying. Or if you know someone that's going through a domestic violence relationship, I know you may get tired of seeing your loved one go through this. I know that you may feel like I'm tired of talking because they're not listening. They may not be at that moment listening the way that you want them to listen, right? But they need you more than anything else. And I thank you, Tracy, for saying that here, because I think so often the people that's on the outside looking get to a point to where they're like, they ain't gonna listen, they ain't gonna leave, so I'm gonna leave. And that's the last thing I think the individuals need at that point.
Yeah, don't give up on them. Don't give up on them, because those words are penetrating. They're just trying to get the strength, to muster up the strength, because you're evaluating, the loss, right? You're assessing the risk. Okay, if I leave, then I have to listen to this domestic violence at my own house all day. At least I have something to distract me from the noise, right?
Right.
So I listened, but if somebody had been persistent and would have really challenged me in love, I probably would have chose a different path, because at the end of the day, I was a church girl, right? Even through all of this, I remember when school started at South Charleston High School early in the morning. And I remember we used to have morning prayer, and we used to go to morning prayer before we caught the bus at like 6 a.m. So I still attended church, all of those things. But again, I don't know if the adults knew what to say.
Right.
Their silence spoke. Their silence was a endorsement.
That's strong.
Their silence was an endorsement. So nobody ain't saying that to me. This one lady said something to me. My mom ain't said nothing. My daddy ain't said nothing. Nobody ain't saying nothing. So this must be what love is about.
Right.
My first experience with love. This must be love. Nobody ain't saying nothing.
Right. So let me ask you a question, Tracy. How did surviving domestic violence impact your sense of identity? And how did you rebuild yourself after such a traumatic experience?
It made me a fighter. I'm not even going to even mince those words. It made me a fighter. It's so funny. I'm an intercessor, a prayer intercessor in my church. And a couple weeks ago, we did a research on your name, right? We did research on your name. And what I found out is the name Tracy means fighter. Like, okay, God wastes nothing. But it made me a fighter. It made me a fighter. It made me resourceful. It made those are the good things, that I walk away with. It also gave me a keen ability to see others going through domestic violence. Again, the theme for me is God wastes nothing. So I see domestic violence. I see it before other people see it. So I see a young lady. I'm like, yeah. So I'm able to speak life because I see differently because I've been through it. It's like a preacher preaching something that they never been through.
Right.
Game recognized game. So I see it. And so when I see it, because I've lived it, I'm able to minister to it. And so I think that is one of the blessings. I'm a fighter. I'm able to see it. It's awakened some perseverance in me that I didn't, some resiliency that I didn't know that I had. And
Right.
I'm grateful for those things. Again, he wastes nothing. So I think above everything, it allows me to fight. But as I get older, I fight differently, right? I was fighting with my fist then and fighting with these words.
Right.
Listen, these words are sharp, right? These words are
Mm-hmm.
sharp. I knew how to use these words, and I was fighting with these fists. But now I know how to fight with my prayers. I know how to fight with encouragement. I know how to sometimes be in the room with people and you ain't got to say nothing.
Right.
And so I think those are the things that God has downloaded in me for the journey now.
Mm-hmm. So it almost sounded like when you were talking about, when you were being very descriptive of how you was fighting, what immediately came to my mind was hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, because he was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He was hurt. His
Mm-hmm.
mother had, so my son's father was a twin. His mother had him at, I think, 14. So he was raising himself, right? And so he was just using the tools that he had, right? He was using the tools that he had. And I understand now that all that frustration, anxiety, aggression, whatever, built onto the fact that we're teenagers, he expressed it through hitting me, through pushing me.
Mm-hmm.
That was his way of releasing it. And after he released it, we were back in love.
So Tracy, did your hurt? So let me ask you a question. So let's talk about Tracy's hurt, right? Did Tracy's hurt ever cause her to hurt other folks?
Ooh,
when you look at the different layers of hurt that you've endured up to that point.
Absolutely. I'm quick with this tongue. Okay. So when I see people getting near, I can shoot you down with this tongue. Life and death is in the tongue. I also realize that's my blessing, right?
Right.
The things that I say are my blessing. And so it's a double it's a double entendre almost, if that makes any sense. And so I was definitely hurt, and I would hurt people. Now I always had this very empathetic heart, right? I always, I'm one of those people with a bleeding heart. But yes, if you came for me, bring it. I'm gonna give it to you. And I might not give it to you with my fists, but I'm gonna give it to you with these words, and these words are gonna make you feel like you got hit with this fist. So absolutely, and let's just be honest. I was in a house where there was constant arguing. So I was in the house learning a master class of arguing. Right. I was in a master class of arguing, so I knew how to argue with the best. My mom and dad argued with the best, and they hit low. And so I knew from being in that master class of arguing how to tear somebody down who I needed to tear down.
Right. Chase, I don't know if you can see any of the comments in the chat, but all I keep seeing is wow. Right. I see once that person said wisdom, this is me. Wow. And so I can definitely tell you that what you're talking about, somebody on this podcast today is relating to what you're saying. And so again, I wasn't quite sure exactly what all we were going to talk about today. Right. But I knew that whatever we was going to talk about was going to bring forth some energy. And so here's my question to you. What are some misconceptions, right, that people may have about starting over after facing such hardships or going through domestic violence? And the reason I ask that is because sometimes you'll hear people say, well, the cycle continues, right? They went from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship, and all you see is domestic violence. But I know sometimes that is a misconception, right? And so my question to you again is, what are some misconceptions that you think people may have about starting over into new relationships?
You can do it. You can start over. I had a pivotal moment. So like I said, I was with my son's father for 10 years. So 10 years of domestic violence, maybe a year of that there wasn't violence. So, okay. So 10 years of domestic violence. And I had this pivotal moment. So, I had been entertaining the idea of moving, right? From West Virginia, right, to Atlanta. I had been entertaining it, but I hadn't quite landed because, I had a son, right? I had a son. His father lived in West Virginia. My support system was on Smoot Avenue. I have, lots of cousins, lots of family. I was comfortable. Even though there was misery, you can get comfortable in the misery, right? I was comfortable. I worked at the college. I worked at West Virginia State, my alma mater. And I was comfortable in the misery. I was comfortable in existing. And so I remember, I will never forget this moment, but it set the trajectory for my life. I remember one of my best friends, Jennifer Davis. Everybody knows who's from West Virginia. Jennifer Davis is one of my best friends. She actually dated the twin. Okay, so my son's father was a twin. Like I said, she dated the other one, and we were best friends, right? And so around this time, her son, which was my son's father's nephew, was getting christened or baptized. I can't remember which one it was. And so I remember going over to the Nazarene Church, walking across State's campus, because at the time I lived at an apartment. I lived at Curtis Square. I walked across State's campus to Nazarene Church, and he was getting christened. But it just so happened that the same day that my son had a football game. And so from those who are from West Virginia, my son's father was very good in athletics, right? Even though he was dope, he was good in athletics. And so athletics meant everything to him. It was his legacy, right? And so we went to the baptism, Chris, I can't remember which one it was. And when I tell you, he showed out on me right outside of that church, and it broke my spirit and it broke my heart. And I remember fleeing. I left my son there with his dad. And I remember just fleeing the church and running across that campus, just boo-hoo crying, like snotting and crying, because he like hurt me to my soul. Yes, he had hurt me with his fist, but he hurt me to my soul on the steps of a church. Right. So I remember running across that campus, running into the house. My mom was like sitting on the couch when I opened the door, and I was noticeably crying and noticeably upset. I ran upstairs to my room, and I'm just boo-hooing, that broken-hearted crying. I was so broken. And she came up there, my mom, because remind you, I told you she had gone silent. She came up there and she said, "You need to leave." And I had been contemplating moving to Atlanta with a few of my cousins, and she said, "You need to leave." And that day, I made the decision to leave, no matter what he said. "Oh, you can't take my son. Oh, you can't do better without me. Oh, you stupid. Who you think you are? You ain't gonna have no money. You'll be back." And I made the decision that day to leave. And I tell the story. I moved to Atlanta with, it's so crazy how it worked, but God is so strategic. We went to Philadelphia, me, Erica, Jennifer, a couple of my other cousins, and my sister lived in Philadelphia at the time, and we were laying on my sister's bed, and we all said, we're moving to Atlanta on January the 1st, 2001. And so we all got our plans together. I was scared to tell my job. It was my first job out of college. I worked for Joey Oden, rest in peace. He was my mentor. And I was scared to tell him that I was leaving. So on January the 1st, 2001, everybody moved to Atlanta except me. Because Joey said to me, he said, "Tracy, you're more attractive to a job when you have a job. So don't leave until you have a job." Great advice, right? I'm so glad. Right. And so they moved on January the 1st to Atlanta. And I ended up moving subsequently. I didn't have a job, but I had a good prospect. I ended up moving in March. And was it hard? Absolutely, it was hard, because I left everything, my comfort zone, my family, everything I knew. I didn't drive. I was too scared to drive. Can we just put that out there? I moved into a foreign place where I don't drive. I don't completely have a job, but God said to move. God said to move. And when I tell you it's the best decision that I made, because people will say to me, well, what if it don't work? 2 questions they will ask me. "Are you taking your son with you?" I'm like, "What? We're not taking my son with me." "Are you taking your son with you? And what you gonna do if it don't work out?" And I used to say, "I'm taking my son with me. If it don't work out, I always can come home." I always can come home. And so that was my motivation. I can always come home. Am I coming home? Right. No, but I could always come home. And so starting over is necessary. Starting over is necessary in every journey of our life, whether you are escaping domestic violence, whether you are reinventing yourself, whether you're changing careers because you got laid off. Starting over is necessary. It doesn't feel good. Right. The stretch never feels good. Growth never feels good. But on the other side of growth, that's where the blessing is.
Tracy, you said something. I don't know if anybody else caught this, but I did. Early on in this interview, you said, "Had your mom just said something." Right? And so I don't know if anybody else caught this, but what I heard was there was a moment of your life that you was hurt to the core. You ran in the house and your mom said something.
Yes.
And that's what helped change the trajectory of your life.
She said
that's all
something.
I heard you say. You wanted her to say something,
Yes.
right? Didn't like why she had to say it, but all you said was, God, I need her to say something.
Yes.
And she said it. Right.
And it set things in motion. It set things in motion. She said something. And I can imagine as I look back on it, it probably broke her heart to say it, because I lived with my mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was her comfort, right? Mm-hmm. I lived with my mom, me and my son. So I was a young mom, right? I had my son when I was 19. So my mom really raised my son. Can we just be honest? My mom really raised my son. And so I lived with my mom. And can you imagine her telling me, who just escaped domestic violence herself? Because at this point, she had separated from my dad.
Right.
Her escaping domestic violence herself told me to leave. I was her everything. And then I'm taking her grandson. So I know that had to be, as I look back on it, that had to be a very painful thing to say, but she mustered up the strength to say it, and she realized that it was necessary. Mm-hmm. So I'm thankful to my mom passed about 2.5 years ago, and I wasn't able to share that because I really wasn't able to articulate that, but I'm so grateful that she mustered up the strength. I know it had to be God that allowed her to muster up the strength to tell me, you need to go, with her grandson in tow.
Right. So now Tracy's in Atlanta, right? 2001. Very uncomfortable experience, right? And I am all about, if anybody knows me on this podcast, I don't talk about stuff that's comfortable. I don't even believe in talking about stuff that's uncomfortable. I believe in talking about uncomfortable things because that's what allows for change to happen. So let's talk about this uncomfortable move to Atlanta, Georgia. Tracy don't drive. Tracy has a toddler, right?
Yeah,
Tracy has left
her. He was 8. Actually, 8.
He was 8. I'm sorry, he was 8. She's left her comfort zone of her family, Smoot Avenue, that she's described as a 2-block area. Let's talk about Atlanta, right? Let's talk about when Tracy got to Atlanta. What does that look like for Tracy? Or what did that look like for Tracy? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm so glad I was ignorant, right? Because I thought every place, yes, I traveled while I was in college, but I was ignorant that I thought that everything was like Smoot Avenue, right? I thought, oh, everything was like Smoot Avenue, you know, because we're from a small town. If anywhere you need to go, if you ain't got a car, you can just jump on the bus. And God forbid you can't get on the bus, you just call C&H taxi, right? So I grew up during that time, right? You might wait an hour for the taxi, but that was pretty much how you got around in West Virginia. Either you had a car, I didn't drive, right? And so you either got on the bus or you caught a taxi. And so that was my perspective, right? So when I got, it's so funny how ignorant I was, but I'm so grateful I think God has a sense of humor and he's so strategic. When I got here, because remember, all my cousins moved here first, right? Mm-hmm. So they all lived in one apartment, right? When we first moved here. So you can imagine all of us in one apartment and they already are settled, right? And so here I come in March with my son in tow. And they're like, oh, this is your closet. This is your closet.
Now,
it's a 2-bedroom apartment.
Let me pause for a second, Tracy. Let me pause. If anybody knows Tracy, all right, I don't know how you fit any of those clothes, shoes, and all that stuff in that closet. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let you continue.
Keisha,
I'm just talking about the fashion diva here.
That's how critical what my mom said, how pivotal it was, because at that moment when it was time for me to pack up, I packed everything that I owned. And everybody knows I've always been a fashionista, right? I've always been a fashionista. I packed everything that I owned that I could fit. Let me say that, everything that I could fit in 4 suitcases. So that's my son's stuff and my stuff. And I moved to Atlanta on the Amtrak. Let that just sit in for a second. So you know that had to be God orchestrating, because I look back on that, I'm like, man, I wouldn't be moving with no Amtrak. My 4 suitcases with my little son in tow, and I moved to Atlanta on the Amtrak train, only to get to Atlanta. And they like, this is your closet. This is your closet. So again, this is a 2-bedroom apartment. So immediately, I took out God is so good. I took out my 401k. I had worked at the college for a little over a year. I took out the little bit of money I had in my 401k. And Eric and I, which is my partner in fashion, we moved into an apartment complex. I maybe been there 2 weeks. We moved into the apartment complex next door. And so we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment. But remember, I don't have a car. And I applied for this job that's in Buckhead. Okay, so let me just give some context for those who don't know. I live currently and still to this day in Clayton County, Georgia, right? Buckhead is about 25, 30 miles away. So I interviewed for a job because, again, my perspective is West Virginia. I can just get on the bus and I can just start my job, right? So I interviewed the first day I got to Atlanta. I interviewed for this job, Botter Fashion College. I was like, oh, it's fashion, it's a college, so on and so forth. And my first day I interviewed, Erica worked downtown in the Georgia Power building. Erica drove downtown to her job, and next to her job was a train station. And she was just like, basically like, you're going to have to catch a train there. Mind you, I don't have a perspective of a train. He dropped me off at this train station, Peachtree Center train station. She dropped me off and she was basically like, sis, like, you have to figure it out. And so I figured out how to get to that interview. Thank God I got the job. But I had to figure out for the next, my next move is, how am I going to get there every day? How am I going to get to this job every day? I don't have a car. My son is in school 25 miles away. How am I going to make this happen? But God's grace is so sufficient. So I learned the train system in Atlanta. I can probably maneuver the train system to this day. I learned how to ride the train and the bus throughout Atlanta as a result. And I did that for several years because I was too scared to drive. Now, if I'm scared to drive in West Virginia, I'm scared to drive in Atlanta. Terrified. But,
hot Atlanta.
Starting over requires some different tools.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't realize I was adding tools to my tool belt. I was learning how to be resourceful. I was learning how to navigate in challenges. He was stretching me all at the same time. And here's the thing, he's so funny as I look back on it, and I just think how good God is. I said, my son went to school in Clayton County. I got off work at 5 p.m., right? I got off work at 5 p.m. He had to be picked up by daycare by 6:30. And every minute after 6:30, they would charge you a fee. And if you didn't get there by like 6:35, 7 o'clock, something like that, they would call defects. And so I had to figure out how to maneuver. When Erica couldn't pick him up or whatever it was, I had to figure out how to get my son. And so I learned how to be resourceful. Funny thing, I'm going to say this. I was in the MARTA annual report. MARTA is the transportation in Atlanta, because I had navigated how to navigate the train and the bus system so well that they featured me in their annual report. I can't remember what year that was, but I had to learn how to get around because I was like, my son ain't gonna be sitting there and they definitely ain't gonna call defects. And I heard my son's father in my ear, you'll be back. And so that motivated me to keep pushing. But starting over is necessary. It's necessary for your growth.
And sometimes we know in moments when things just seem unfamiliar, right? Yeah. Moments when things seem scary, it's so easy to quit, right? But you got to keep fighting, right?
I wasn't going back.
In the end, the reward in the end is much greater.
Yes.
When you look at the long aspect of all the things that you've been able to accomplish during all those moments of being uncomfortable, all those moments of, am I going to make it on this train? Am I going to make it on this bus enough to get to where I need to get to pick up my son? So I say and that.
Small town girl. Think about a small town girl on Atlanta train, on the train in Atlanta. So I'm seeing things, some things I've seen for the first time, but I can't act scared because I got a little one. If it was just me, I probably would have packed my bags and went home. But I had a little one who was depending on me. I ain't got time to be scared. I got to be resourceful. I got to make sure this little one can eat and that I prove his dad wrong. That was my goal.
And again, I'm going to pause for a second, Tracy, because I want to make sure that our listeners know that, again, I see a lot of engagement in the conversation in our chat here, but I do want to open this up that if anybody wishes to ask any questions, right, please feel free to do this. This is a live episode. If you wish to also join on to this conversation, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this episode is for everyone. Tracy is our featured guest, but I want others to know that if there's something that you want to ask, whether it's Tracy specifically, if there's something that you wish to say in general, please know that you do have the opportunity to do that here on this episode of Heart to Heart with Keisha B. So Tracy, as we talk about Tracy being featured in the MARTA, because she was determined she was going to make this work, hell or high water, yes. Right? In what ways have your journey inspired you to help others redefine their lives, especially those facing similar hardships?
I realized that everything that God was teaching me, whether it was how to navigate the MARTA system, how to be resourceful, how to be featured in the MARTA, all of that was necessary for the work that I would be doing. And so my work, so it's so funny, the work that I did when I first moved to Atlanta is I was the student services coordinator. I didn't know what it meant at the time, right? I was student services coordinator. Basically, in a nutshell, what that meant is I help people navigate systems so they can stay in school. That's why I say God has a funny sense of humor. And so as I am seeking out resources for my students, I was getting resources for myself. I tell this story, and for many years, I was ashamed to tell this. I used to sell, at my job, I used to sell MARTA cards. I used to sell the MARTA cards, right? And many days I didn't have the money for a MARTA card. Mm-hmm. The MARTA card, again, is the transportation, the train and bus system. I didn't have the money for the MARTA card. So I moved to Atlanta. Again, I'm ignorant, right? So I was making $24,000 a year with a young son, an apartment, $24,000. So, ends wasn't meeting, right? Ends wasn't meeting. I don't have the luxury of calling my mom and like, Mom, can you send me? She ain't have it either. And I for sure wasn't calling my son's father, even though he was a dope deal. I would call him because I ain't going back. And I remember having to sell MARTA cards to people, and I don't even know how I'm going to get on the MARTA. I didn't even know how I was going to get on the MARTA. But again, he awakened, okay, Tracy, get resourceful and look into programs that give you free MARTA cards. And so Erica and I found a program where we carpooled. Mind you, we were driving to get, she was dropping me off anyway, right? If we carpooled, they would give us $50 in a gas card. And then they would give me 5 vouchers a year to catch a cab. And so when I went through that, I would sometimes, and again, I'm so glad for his grace and his mercy. Sometimes I would take one of the monthly cards out of what I was selling, use it and put it back because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get back and forth to work.
Right.
But those are the moments. And I think about, man, I'm in here selling these MARTA cards and I ain't got the money to get my own MARTA card. But again, he was teaching me, he was preparing me to be able to sow seeds into others. So now I'm able to. So my career, before I moved into Smoot Avenue as an entrepreneur, my career has been helping people with transitional services so they can either stay in school or they can just fight life, fight the good fight. And so as I was researching shelters, as I was researching food pantries, as I was researching MARTA, daycare, I was using the same information that I was giving out. But again, I perfected how to look good, right? To look like I got it all together. Look like I got it all together. I don't need no money or whatever, but I was struggling. But the same resources that I had to research were the same resources that I was using. And it allowed me, again, God has such a funny sense of humor and he wastes nothing. It allowed me, that same research allowed me to excel in my career because I was able to keep students in school. And that was my job, keep the students in school. Retention. I didn't know at the time. I just thought I was just being a servant, right? But I was able to keep people in the school and I just kept getting promoted off of the things that I needed. How funny is that? Off the things I needed and I was giving to them, I kept getting promoted because I was giving them the resources, but they were actually tools that I needed. And so it allowed me to excel in my career because all of my career was around helping people realize their potential, provide transitional services in order to reach their goals, whether it was graduation, whatever it was. So again, I just look back on it like, God, okay, you were so strategic with that.
You know, Tracy, I heard some of me and you, right? Because it's some of those things that we do when we're single mamas. Yeah. It's some of those things that we have to do when we're mothers or parents, right? I don't want to exclude any parent, but right now I can relate because I once was a single mother. I'm a single mother now for different circumstances, but the things that you do to make sure that you provide the best that you can for your child or children when they have no idea what mama is doing to make ends meet, right? And so what I hear Tracy saying is, even though I was helping somebody else's child, I had to do whatever I had to do to make sure that my child was well taken care of as well, right? Absolutely. Again, you know, being a parent is not an easy task in no way, shape, or form.
It has no book, has no journal, has no guide.
You know, like even if we wrote a journal with our first kid, that journal going to look totally different for your second kid. It's going to look totally different for your third kid. You know, so you're right. There is no journal. There is no book. But the best thing you can do is be the best parent that you can possibly be. And we're going to make some mistakes along the way. But it's showing our children that we can be resilient through trials and tribulations, because at some point, what we teach them is what they're going to pour into their child or children as well.
And you know what? I challenge parents, and this is just something I've learned like in my last, 5 to 7 years. Don't hide the journey from your kids. I'm not saying they need to know knee deep what's going on, like the details, right? They don't need to know all the grown folk details, but don't hide the journey from your kids, because, and here's the thing. So my son is now 30, about to be 31, right? And we have conversations about the journey. And I realized that, I did him a disservice by not sharing that, like, I was broken. I was broke. I went to food pantries. I struggled, but I always, again, I learned from what I saw. He always saw the best, right? He always had the nicest things, because that's how I grew up, right? But I didn't teach him struggle. I didn't teach him struggle because I thought that was not what he needed to see. And so as his own family, when everything is not perfect, he thinks he's failed because I didn't teach him struggle. And that's something that, as I'm an adult and I can stand back and look on it, like, I should have taught him, like, those tennis shoes came because I had to work. It took me 40 hours to buy them, $200 tennis shoes, or that grilled cheese sandwich that you're eating. I went to the food pantry and they gave me cheese, so we don't teach our kids struggle because we're scared. And I don't know if it's, I'm only African-American, right? I can't speak for any other. I don't know if it's just a Black thing that we like want to fake it till we make it. No, we can't fake it till we make it with our kids, because we are paralyzing them when they get into their own journey. And so me and my son a few years ago had a good conversation. And I apologized to him. I apologize for not showing him struggle. I apologize for him not letting him see me cry, to be broken. I'm not saying he needs to see everything, but now that he has his own family, he doesn't give up easy, because he like, my mom did this thing easy. She ain't cry. She ain't sweat. We always have food on the table. I always look good. He didn't know the cost of the oil, right?
Right.
The cost of the oil. And that's not necessarily a good thing. We got to teach our kids that struggle is part of the journey, because his self-esteem was, in a place, because he was like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I don't have my own place. I'm like, son, listen, I live with my mama until I moved to Atlanta. I didn't pay a single bill. Keisha. I sometimes get mad at myself. I didn't ask my mom, like, you want help on this light bill? I was grown, working a grown person's job, and I took my check and used it as my own. I didn't help my mom. I didn't say, Mom, you need help on this light bill? I just came home from work after being at West Virginia State College, living with my mama, who's taking care of my son, and like, Mom, what's for dinner?
Take it for granted, right?
Taking it for granted, because she didn't teach me struggle. So I thought it was easy. I thought money was on some kind of tree somewhere in Institute. I guess I did, because I didn't even think about what is her own internal struggle to put food on the table. And so now my job is to teach my kids what struggle looks like. I have a 13-year-old. My son and my daughter are 13 years apart. So I have a daughter that's about to graduate from high school. And so she has a different life than my son had, right? Of course, has a different life. And so I just want to make sure, if nothing else, that people walk away, that it's okay to teach your kids just to see you sweat.
Right.
It's okay for your kids to see you sweat, because when they start sweating, they start struggling, they won't give up. Because they realize, okay, my mom overcame this. My dad overcame this. My grandmother overcame this. My guardian overcame this. And so it doesn't seem so foreign. And so I apologize to my son. I'm sorry that I didn't teach you how to struggle. And so when struggle came your way, you thought you failed.
And, Tracy, it's almost like what we used to always hear, stay in a kid's place, be a kid. But I think what you said was more touching than not. Sometimes kids need to know what adults are really going through, so they don't have those misconceptions, right? That they don't think that money grows on trees, or that $150 shoe I bought you, I had it. I may have not. I may have missed a payment on a layaway, right? Or let's be real, right? Let's be real. Or I may have chosen not to pay a bill because I'm just trying to make sure that you're fresh.
Yes.
And then you wonder why we sit out. There you go.
So hide in plain view. There you go. There I was right in the generational curse. I was repeating the cycle. Because remember, I was hiding in plain sight. I looked good growing up, but inside there was turmoil. And I was giving him that same generational curse. I was giving it to him whether I knew it or not. Isn't that funny how you pass down generational curses and you don't even realize it? I was repeating the cycle.
Like I can remember times, Tracy, sitting in my driveway, right? Me and my kids, we sit in the driveway. It's daytime, right? I just got off work. They think we just chilling in the car. What they did not know was that mama didn't have enough money to pay the electric bill. So I couldn't lift up the garage. So here I am texting, trying to call people, hoping they staying in their kids' place, just trying to figure out, how am I going to get this electricity turned on, right? Maybe there should have been days I should have told them, hey, listen, I'm just going to be real. We're sitting here because we ain't got no electricity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because again, it doesn't mean that you failed as a parent. It means that you're trying to prevent them from failing in their adult life.
Absolutely. I think about struggle meals, right? Every weekend, Jennifer and her son would come, because they lived in Kennesaw at the time, which is a little while away from where I live. They would come and we all would gather at our apartment, and I would make spaghetti every weekend. And the kids would be like, oh, Auntie Tracy, make that spaghetti. They didn't realize I had to make that spaghetti because that's all we had. That's all we had. I could stretch these noodles and this ground turkey or ground hamburger, whatever was on sale, just so we all can eat. We weren't having spaghetti because we liked it. We was having spaghetti because it was a struggle meal. But again, God wastes nothing. I know how to cook. I know what price per pound is when I go to the store. I know how to use coupons if I do. I know how to use the sales paper. And so at the time it was a burden. Like, why I got to do all this? Why can't I just go into Publix and buy what I want? No, I had to budget this out, because if I go over this budget, I'm gonna have to go dip into these Marta cards that don't belong to me and swipe that card because I'm not being real. Listen, I tell people all the time, I know how humble you have to get yourself to go into a food pantry. Like, don't let the smooth taste fool you. Don't let the glasses and the bracelet and Smooth Avenue fool you. I remember having to humble myself and go to a food pantry and give them my ID and tell them why I needed food, and walking out with this box of, miscellaneous things and making that happen because I don't want my son to be hungry. Because the thing I want to get across, if nothing else, is we got to share this stuff. We got to share this stuff, because when we don't share it, somebody is suffering in silence because they think you got it all figured out. Because people see you all nice and shiny, right? But they don't know that you don't look like what you've been through. I've been punched physically and emotionally. I've been to food pantries. I've walked. I missed buses. Been standing at the bus stop in the cold and cars splashed me as I'm on my way to work, and now I'm wet. I've been through so much. But again, I don't look like what I've been through, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for his grace and his mercy and for people that he sent. So a lot of times people are, oh God, I'm praying for, I need $20, I need $100, I need this, I need a new job, I need this. And we don't realize that our prayers he sends through people.
Mm-hmm.
He sends through people. But when you are suffering in silence and letting people hiding in plain view and not letting people know that your struggle, you sometimes miss your blessing because you're too proud.
There you go.
You're too proud. I was proud because remember, I grew up in a house where keeping up with the Joneses. How dare the Lewis clan be asking for help? So I was too proud for many years. And he has a way of humbling us in a good way. I'm glad that he broke me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that he broke me. He's near to those who have a broken and contrite spirit. And I found God in the brokenness. And that's the only reason I'm standing here today. But it is just so important that we share the struggle, not just with our children, but with people next to us, and that we recognize that our prayers are answered when he sends people. So you got to get out of your head. You got to get out of yourself. What are they going to think? What is their opinion of me? God sends resources through people. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're too blind to see it or too proud to see it, you're going to miss your exit towards destiny. You're going to get delayed. You know, when you miss an exit, you got to come back around to the exit come again. I want to get off the right exit at the right time because I want to be on my assignment when he calls me. And so it comes through people.
There's moments I pause, Tracy, through my episodes and I say, that was a heart to heart. We're Sunday at 8:06 Eastern Standard Time. I feel like right now we're in church, right? Because church ain't about just assembling in the building. Church is about assembling wherever you can come to. So right now, I feel like we are having church today on Heart to Heart with Keisha B. And I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to read what Mary Brown has written. She wrote, when I divorced, I sat down with my daughter to explain to them that we would not be able to do some of the things that we used to do. I told them each month they would take turns to choose an activity based upon our budget. Some months they would say, we are good. A year later, when God blessed me with a better paying job and I had extra and I wanted to splurge on them, they had got used to the budget. They stopped asking because they didn't want to go without. Children understand our struggles when. Yeah. Mary, thank you so much for being very transparent, not only with myself and Tracy, but also others that may be reading or you allow me to read to those whom I may not know that are watching. So, Mary, thank you for that. And for anyone else that is also engaging. But I do want to let you know, Tracy, that Erica, when you said spaghetti, that must meant something to her because she put spaghetti, spelled it all the way out with a few T's, extra T's and extra I's, right? So
I was a spaghetti queen, Keisha. I might can go in the Guinness Book of World Records for making spaghetti.
So Tracy, we're in Atlanta, right? We've been to the food pantry. But one thing I know that Tracy has always done and still continues to do is dress, right? If anybody read the title for today, it's called Thrift Triumphs, a fashion influencer's journey from trauma to style icon. So can you take us to the moment that you discovered your passion for fashion as well as thrifting? And how did it become a source of empowerment for you?
I've always loved fashion. Even as a little girl, Erica always tells this story. Tracy used to cut up outfits for your Barbie. You know, you used to be doing that thing a long time. I was one of those late. I played with Barbies and probably until I was 14. And it wasn't the Barbies. It was because I loved to change their clothes. And so fashion was always a passion for me. As I look back, I didn't know it at the time, but my father was a fashionista in his day. I only learned that later or whatever. So it was in my blood, right? Mm-hmm. But I always loved fashion from a little girl. I remember my mom was a big yard seller. We get up early on Saturday mornings in West Virginia and we would go to yard sales and we would go to garage sales and we would go to rummage sales in churches, you know, and I just remember that being like such a peaceful time, you know, like mm-hmm. we would escape the noise by, my mom always made sure. I didn't realize that. I was just telling somebody here recently. I think I was telling my husband that I realized. So my mom would plan an activity for us, much like Mary was saying. She would plan an activity for us every weekend, right? I realize now that she was planning an activity to get out of the house from the noise. But one of the things that we would do is we would go to yard sales and so I learned at an early age, because I never like to look like anybody else. I always like to set trends. And so I was a trendsetter. I didn't know what it was at the time. I just know I don't want to look like nobody else, so on and so forth. And so I would find one of a kind pieces when I would go out with my mom to yard sales. And so that was a seed. That's funny. My pastor was just preaching about a seed today. He was planting, God was planting a seed that I didn't even know was being, watered. And so she would drag us, and it would almost be like, almost like a drug, right? To find something that is $1, and then you wear it to school, and people like, oh, that's so fly. And you like, I only paid $1 for it. And I never made bones about, I never cared about, saying, oh, this was only $1. To me, that was like, it was like a great thing. And so I learned how to thrift. I didn't know that's what it was called then. I learned how to thrift based upon my mom just trying to get out of the house and just trying to how to stretch a dime. So I learned it. And again, too, we grew up in an age where there was hand-me-downs. You remember that, Keisha? So I was the middle child. I grew up in the age of hand-me-downs. Now, I didn't have to do it. We did it because we wanted to. But my mom was one of 13. And so it went down. A sweater went down until it could go down no more. And so I learned from my mom and from my grandmother, like how to take something for a little bit of nothing and turn it into something that's amazing. And so fashion was birthed in me, probably before the foundation of the world. And so when it's so funny, I had several iterations of Smooth Ave before Smooth Ave came. Okay. So me and Erica had a little thing in the early 2000s. It was called SIBO. It was, my maiden name is Lewis. So it was the IS from Lewis and the BO from Boxley. Eric Boxley is Erica's last name. And so I had SIBO. We had SIBO first, right? We tried to do some fashion style, and we did a little bit of something. Then that imploded. Then we tried to do a little accessories business. There was like 6 of us. That was a big fail. You can't do business with everybody, but I learned that. And then when in 2019, when I was on sick leave from work, Smooth Avenue was birthed. And I think it's important that I tell this story because I worked in corporate America. So I learned because, I had a son that I got to do the safe route. So put that fashion down, okay? Push it down. That fashion ain't making you no money, okay? You got a son, you live in Atlanta, you got to keep these lights on. And so I was in corporate America. And like I said, I excelled in corporate America. I started in higher education, and then I moved into workforce development. And so I pushed fashion down. But of course, when you got fashion in you, it shows up in how you dress, right? Whether I'm wearing a suit, whether I'm wearing a dress down to my ankles, it's still going to show up because it's who I am. And so I had a pivotal moment in 2019. I was working a 6-figure job. I was comfortable. I had about 40 to 60 people on my staff. I kept on getting promoted. I was like, I'm going to retire from this place because the money is good. I can go in any store and buy whatever I want. I ain't got to worry about no MARTA cards. I got a car. I got a husband. I ain't got to worry about that. And then God was like, it's time to go. I said, what you say, God? I must not heard that record right. And he kept on sending me, I always call it the pebble theory. He sends a pebble, then he sends a rock, then he sends a brick, then he sends a brick wall. But because I was in my comfort zone, I had this good old job, I had all this influence, people listened to me. I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I ain't had time to hear what God had to say. Right. Can we just be honest? When we are at our blessed, that is when we are the most susceptible to being disobedient to God. Because we think we running things. And so I remember I went to the doctor like on a Thursday, right? Mind you, God said, Tracy, it's time to leave. And I ain't listen. I didn't listen. I put my earbuds in. I didn't listen. And I went to the doctor on like a Thursday. And she said, you're going to have surgery on like Tuesday. I'm like, what you say? You're going to have surgery on Tuesday. And ain't nothing you can do about it. So I went out, I had surgery, I had a hysterectomy. I'm very transparent about that because we don't talk about those things. That's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole nother episode.
Okay. I had a hysterectomy. And during that time that I was recovering from my hysterectomy, God dealt with me. God dealt with me. I felt like I was in the wilderness, like, I was in the wilderness, like the children of Israel. I was in the wilderness, like he dealt with me. I couldn't sleep. I was restless. I just didn't have any peace because I wasn't doing what he told me to do. And then I was supposed to go back like after 12 weeks. And God said, I told you not to go back. And so I called Erica. I said, Erica, God gave me this fashion thing, child. We got to do it. And of course, Erica was like, if you know Erica, me and Erica ride or die since we've been young. She was like, okay. And so I, at like midnight, the day before I was supposed to go back, or right the day I was supposed to go back, send in my resignation letter, and Smooth Avenue was birthed. But I have to give credit to this one particular person. When I say God sends you people when you need what you need, there was a young lady that was on my team. She sat like right behind me. We were in cubicles, right? And she sat directly behind me in the cubicle. And I remember getting up from my cubicle, and she said to me, so I know it was God. She said, you got to do this fashion thing. And I kind of said, what'd you say? Like it was out of nowhere. She said, you got to do this fashion thing. And I never forgot it. And it precipitated that whole me giving in my notice. And Smooth Avenue was birthed a month before the pandemic hits.
So we're going to pause for a second. All right. As they say, sometimes we need a commercial break. All right. So while we do a commercial break, I still need y'all to stay there because just in case you don't know about Smooth Ave, just in case you're now searching on your phone, trying to figure out what exactly is Smooth Ave, I'm going to go ahead and give you a visual of what you need to be looking for. Commercial break. One second. I want to make sure everybody see what you need to be looking for. So we're about to take a commercial break. Again, I need y'all, don't leave. Just start searching your phone. If you got Facebook, I'm sure you're on it. Go ahead and like Smooth Ave's page, and this is what you're going to be looking for. Commercial break.
How perfect. How perfect. Smooth Avenue. God is good. God is
all right.
good.
We're back. I hope y'all, I hope right now Tracy or Erica, whoever y'all social media person is seeing all these likes come in, because I'm all about making sure that everybody gets their flowers, right, on this here podcast. So again, that picture was of Smooth Ave. Find it on your Facebook page, find it on your IG page, because she's going to continue talking about Smooth Ave and what they bring to you live once a week still, right, Tracy? More than once a week?
Well, no, now we're like up to 3 times a week on Facebook. And again, for those who have been since the beginning of the podcast, Smooth Avenue is where I grew up. And so that's where the name, me and Erica spent probably over a week trying to find the name. And then one day I was in the shower and I was like, Smooth Avenue. And I called Erica and Erica was like, yes. And so Smooth Avenue, a lot of people say smooth, but it's smooth. We are a live selling fashion platform. And so basically, what does that mean? Because people are like, what does that mean? So if you just picture home shopping network, right? You come to the Smooth Avenue page 3 times a week, and we go live from Facebook, similar to what we're doing, and we show items, and you have the opportunity to bid on them in real time. One of our mantras are dope fashions, all sizes. And so we spend hours, sometimes up to 3 hours, showing dope, hand-picked, one-of-a-kind items, back to, me not like to look like anybody, items, and we sell them live in real time on the Smooth Avenue platform. So if you're on here, just go to the Smooth Avenue platform, like us, follow us, and when we go live, you will get a notification and just come by. You don't have to. I always tell people, some people get intimidated by it when they first come on, like, oh, I got to bid on stuff. Come by, watch. Now, I guarantee you, once you watch, you're like, oh, I need some of that. But we have a good time, and what I love and makes us different than any other platform is we have fun. We have fun. We have dope pieces, so you don't look like anybody else. And we're all about our faith. And so one of our other mantras is where fashion, Smooth Avenue is where faith meets fashion. And so we always close out with an inspirational vitamin. After you done got some cute gear to improve your confidence, because when you look good, you feel good. we always close out with an inspirational vitamin. My cousins, a lot of my cousins are on here. I love you. I see them on here in the chat. Michelle and Elizabeth. Yes, we coordinate too. We call them, our family of Smooth Avenue is called, they're called cousins. Cuzzin. And so they are cousins. Once you come into the Smooth Avenue platform, you are then inducted into the Cousin Hall of Fame. And I am very intentional about making sure my cousins know that I love them, that I appreciate them, that I see them, and that I'm sharing the things from my journey through those inspirational anecdotes at the end of their lives. And so join us. We're usually on Tuesday at lunchtime and Wednesday and Fridays at 7 or 8 o'clock, but just follow the Smooth Avenue Facebook page or Instagram page for more information.
Now, Tracy, now I know there was a time in my life, like I was like, man, I really ain't got nothing to wear for my birthday. Right. Yep. And I remember calling you up like, Tracy, listen, this is so out of my character, right? Because I think sometimes I can go to the store, pick up what I want, but sometimes I want to look different too. And so I remember specifically calling you and Erica saying, hey, listen, you ladies got it. I need y'all to style me. Yes, right. You style me. We did a consult. You start pulling things off the rack. You start showing me this and showing me that. I'm like, yeah, I want that leather skirt. I want that shirt. And believe me, I wore it. Like it's on some of my Facebook page, right? Because I'll tag you. So if you buy something, I'm asking you to tag Smooth Avenue so they'll know that you got their piece on. But my question is, do you all still do, I guess, private events to where you will style somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have cousins all the time that, hit me in a DM like, Tracy, I'm going to a wedding, or Tracy, I'm going to a family reunion. I'm going to my homecoming. Do you have this? Do you have that? And I always say, if I don't have it on the rack, when I'm out, I definitely look for you. But I'm always looking out for my cousins. It's so funny because, we've been doing it now for 4.5 years. That just blows my mind that we've been doing it for 4.5 years. We've been doing it for 4.5 years. And it gets to the point now that because most of my cousins are regulars. When I'm out in the store, I already see them. I always see the garment with them in mind. And so sometimes when I'm live, I'm like, Erica Simpson, Mary Brown, this got your name written all over it. And it's so funny because they're like, how do you know that? How do you remember all these orders? This is a ministry for me. So let me just say that. You said something that was so poignant to me at the beginning. You said church has to be outside of the four walls. So church can happen through us. And so I bring my faith. I'm unapologetic about my faith. I bring that, and I realize that this is an assignment to make people feel better. Because when you feel better, you can do the things that God called you to do. And so confidence is built when you put on a garment and you don't realize, you think, oh, I'm just putting on. No, you are mounting up with confidence. And so this is a ministry for us. And so people are like, how do you remember what you sold me 3 years ago? Because it's my ministry. It's the assignment. So I'm going to remember you. And not only and I know this is so counter to business philosophy. I'm also a business coach, right? And it's so counter to business. I tell people, and I don't care because God called me to do this. I tell people, you don't have to buy nothing. Come on here to escape. Come on here to laugh. If you can't buy anything, tag a friend. I don't want you to have your lights off because you ain't here buying a shirt. I say that. And people are like, Tracy, you can't say that. That's your business. No, God takes care of me. If I take care of his house, he takes care of my house. So many times I'm talking to some of the Smooth Avenue cousins in the DM. They like, Tracy, can you pray for me? Tracy, my daughter is in the hospital. Can you pray for me? The fires are coming near to us in California. Can you pray for me? My mom just passed. So it's more than just a fashion experience. It's a sisterhood, a brotherhood. It's a family. And I'm careful always. Family doesn't have the same connotation to everybody. But when you in the Smooth Avenue family, I'm not trying to get your coins. I'm not trying to get your coins. I'm trying to sow seeds, right? I'm trying to sow seeds because I realized when I needed a seed, somebody sowed into me. And so I am going to reach out. If I'm on my timeline and see like you're having a hard time or it's your birthday, I'm like, cousin, happy birthday. Or I might send you something if your mom passed. I might send you something in the mail that you didn't ask me for because it's deeper than fashion for me. It is a ministry. And I realized to be seen by people, remember, I wasn't seen. I was hiding in plain view. To be seen by people, to allow people to have a voice, and to allow people to feel confident through something they got in Smooth Avenue or through a word that I said is more important to me than selling a single everything. And so I always say that it's where Smooth Avenue is where faith meets fashion. It's where faith meets fashion. And so it's counter to business 101, but it is the foundation for Jesus 101.
You know, Tracy, I keep saying you said something right that touched me. And what you said is that people at times buy pieces from Smooth Avenue and they put it on because it's a confidence builder, or they may be going through something. And my mind began to spin, right? I started talking about how when I was wanting to find something for my birthday, I called you all of May of 2021, right? What I didn't know was that one of the pieces that I got, I wore in November of 2021. Follow me for a second. 3 weeks after my son passed away, right? I held this red and white shirt. I'll never forget it. I went to Atlanta. I was at my Delta conference. I wasn't really focused. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't take many pictures because I didn't look like I need to be taking pictures. I was a grieving mother, still am. But I look back at those pictures. I thought I was fly, right? I felt the best in this shirt. Didn't know why, but you just told me why, right? But I remember putting on this shirt. I held on these big high boots, held on this red and white striped shirt, and I felt good. Even though I was going through some stuff, right? Even though I was going through the most traumatic point of my life, I had that shirt on. And I never thought about it until you just said what you said. And I look back at those pictures some days and I'm like, man, a lot of times I don't even like taking pictures. I take pictures, but a lot of times I'm very critical of myself when I take pictures. And I was not ashamed to post those pictures. And I know on the inside, I was all the way broken, right? But on the outside, you couldn't have told me I wasn't fly. And I wish somebody would have. Because I would have said, I got on Smooth Ave and you can't tell me I'm not fly. Hello. Right? And so
I remember that. I remember that. And Keisha, what you don't know is like you were one of our like first believers. Because again, we had just launched when you called. So it's, you know, because usually, can we just be honest? Your hometown usually supports you last.
Yes.
They support you after strangers support you. And I can't say nothing but love for my hometown. Our hometown has showed up amazingly. And so you were one of our first cousins. And so I am so grateful that you believed in us, that you didn't remember Tracy at South Charleston, domestic violence with, you know, baby daddy. You could have left me at that image, right? But you didn't, right? Because your hometown, they always remember you from how they remember you, right? They don't know that your growth and your acceleration and your stretching. And so I just want to say thank you that you saw us beyond what you knew. You saw us beyond what you knew. And I appreciate that. Because again, hometowns don't always support you until everybody else supports you. But we've had just the opposite experience. A hometown has really been strong at Smooth Avenue's growth.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing. So you said something, all right, and I just want other folks to hear this. What does styling on a dime? Because you use the word dime, right? So what does styling on a dime mean to you? And how do you incorporate creativity and resourcefulness, in your work for other folks?
And I think Erica, what I love is Erica used to have an Instagram page. It was called Diva on a Dime. I was like, ooh,
I remember that.
Like, ooh, that's I like that. I like that. But it just basically means taking a little bit of nothing and turn it into a lot of something. You know, it don't take a lot of money to look good. That is, you know, people think it takes a lot of money to look good. It does not take a lot of money to look good, because I promise you, some of my favorite pieces I paid the least amount of money for. But it's about taking that creativity and that resourcefulness from all of our days at yard sales with our grandmother and our parents, and making it look like something. And so that's what resourcefulness looks like to me, because again, my whole goal has always been not to look like anybody else. That was something that my dad really, really emphasized growing up. Don't look like anybody else. Don't be sheep to the slaughter. Do your own thing. Be unapologetic. I remember a situation when I was with my son's father, and and he was giving me a ride to college, to the school or whatever. And I came out, I had planned this outfit. I had on this was during the days of Brandy. So I'm dating myself. When Brandy and Monica had the boys' mind kind of thing. I remember I had on like this little plaid, little pleated dress. And I had on like these high socks and I had on like these Doc Marten type shoes. And I came out to the car, right? You couldn't tell me I wasn't doing it. Okay. I was doing it. I came out to the car and my son's father was like, "What do you have on? You need to take that off." I just remember that so vividly. And I remember just put my head down, going back into the house and started changing my clothes. And my dad was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I was just like, I don't, of course you always justify, I don't like what I'm doing or whatever. But I realized that was attack to my destiny, right? That was attack to my confidence or whatever. So resourcefulness to me means always thinking outside the box, but taking that dime, the proverbial dime, and turning it into a masterpiece. Again, I always say to people, you don't got to go to malls. Everything that you need is out there at thrift stores and yard sales. You just have to have a desire. And if you don't have a desire, then you shop with Smooth Avenue. We'll bring it to you while you're sitting on your couch, drinking your drink.
And I think you all also have a website. Am I correct with that?
We do.
Okay.
And
just in case.
SmoothAvenue.com. SmoothAvenue.com. We used to listen, it's so funny. Smooth Avenue, I used to sell the items on Smooth Avenue, but I couldn't even keep up with replacing the items on Smooth Avenue. So I try to push. So the website is of course, when you have a website, it's to make sure it gives you the credibility. But all of the magic happens on our live sales on Facebook Live. But I encourage people to go to the website, to follow us, to like us, to if you want to know more about our stories, we have bios on there and how Smooth Avenue came about, the more dial down. But I ain't gonna say the magic because I don't believe in magic. The good stuff happens on our Facebook Lives. Like I said, it's usually Tuesday at lunchtime and Wednesdays and Fridays nights at 8:00. And so if you want to see how this thing is, you are curious about it, tune into the Smooth Avenue Facebook page on those days and see us work this thing. I promise you, there are not very many promises I make in this life, but I promise you, you will have a good time. You will laugh. You might laugh till you cry. You might laugh till you spit out your dentures, but you're going to have a good time, and you might get you a dope piece. You will get you a dope piece while you're at it.
So Tracy, I'm not going to allow this podcast to end today without talking about something. You talked about Tracy moving from West Virginia, Tracy moving to Atlanta, Tracy and Erica starting the business of Smooth Ave, and how much West Virginia folks have supported Smooth Ave. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how much Tracy pours back into West Virginia, right? Just in case those know or don't know, Tracy provides opportunities for many people here in West Virginia. When I speak of people, I'm talking about young people, right? She's pouring back into our youth here often, but definitely once a year, we know for certain what we're going to see is called West Virginia Black Excellence. Absolutely. And so, Tracy, we're not going to let this podcast end without you talking about what started West Virginia Black Excellence, and how others can also pour back into our kids here in West Virginia through West Virginia Black Excellence.
No, thank you, Keisha. I really appreciate that. So West Virginia Black Excellence is definitely God. So during the pandemic, I was, because we were all locked into our social media. We didn't have nothing else to do. We was just locked into social media. And so one day I was sitting on the couch, locked into my social media, and I was scrolling, right? And I saw like a lot of my classmates, like they were pilots and doctors and lawyers. And I was like, man, how powerful would it be? Because our hometown, we grew up in West Virginia, which is a poor state, and there's not a lot of opportunity. If you don't work for the college, the chemical plant, there's not a lot of opportunity, just being blatantly honest. And I realized that there's not a lot of opportunity. And when there's not a lot of opportunity, crime is rampant. And crime usually is precipitated by young people who don't have hope, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting there and I was scrolling. I was like, well, I got this group of people who are established, right? Credentialed, doctored, and then I have this group of people who I'm seeing on my timeline that there's murders, people are getting shot, people are dying, people are overdosing on drugs, these young people. And I was like, how blessed would it be if the two converged? The older established could talk to the younger hopeless, and get them on a pathway. Because that's, again, if somebody would have spoke to me when I was in the middle of my domestic violence, then, you know, my life would have been a lot differently. And so as I was scrolling, God said, you, like, you waiting for somebody else to start something. It starts with you. I said, okay, God, because I listened after that other situation. I'm listening. And so I started West Virginia Black Excellence literally scrolling through my Facebook page. What is West Virginia Black Excellence? So West Virginia Black Excellence is, we're in the seed business. We plant seeds that can bloom and blossom many years later. How do we do that? The first way we do it is we honor trailblazers in West Virginia. Black trailblazers, Black women, not Black women, Black people of excellence, whether they are pilots, whether Keisha was one of our trailblazers. Yes, one of our trailblazers, whether they are giving back to the community, whatever they're doing so that our next generation can see that representation. And so our first is we honor between 5 and 8 trailblazers. Those are people who said, despite what's going on, I am going to elevate West Virginia through my works. So we've honored, you know, college professors, you name the full gamut. And so the other part of that is we give out scholarships. Now, listen, I ain't rich. Remember, I left my job during the pandemic to start Smooth Avenue, right? I left the comfortable job to start Smooth Avenue. And you know, your entrepreneur takes you a long time to get profitable. But God said, listen, I called you to do this. If I called you to do it, I will supply what you need. And so our first year, we gave out, and I hope I'm correct, we gave out $5,000 in scholarships. How in the world we give out $5,000 scholarships? So we award scholarships to rising high school seniors from West Virginia. So you have to be in West Virginia. It's not based upon grades. It's not based upon you going to college. So you can go to college, you can go to trade school, you can go to hair school, but we want to pour back into the next generation. And so every year in the spring, we recognize our trailblazers and then we give out scholarships. So year to date, we have given out over $30,000 in scholarships. I have to just pause there. Like, God, how in the world did we give out $30,000 in scholarships? I started adding up the money and I just can't believe it. I will also say God will send you people, right? And so I had a core group of friends that I reached out to, like, God gave me this vision. Would you help me support this? And so there's about 7 or 8 of us: Latasha Taylor, Frank Walker, who's a lawyer, Chris Jackson, Erica Boxley, Mickey Owens, Jennifer Davis, Ricky Kellum. So we all get together and we're actually in the process right now of choosing our trailblazers for this year. And we decide who's going to be our trailblazer and who's going to be awarded scholarships. If there's ever a deficit, because we try to give at least $1,000. At least $1,000 to each one of our scholarship recipients. And if there's ever a deficit, that core group fundraises until we get where we need to get. But thank God we've only had 1 year where we really, really, really had to go hard in the paint. But if you would like to give the West Virginia Black Excellence, we also have a website for West Virginia Black Excellence. It's westvirginiablackexcellence.org, westvirginiablackexcellence.org. And we are right in the fundraising stages right now to give out scholarships. Because again, I want to be what I didn't have. And many times, you know, the young people that got good grades and, you know, they have the scholarships waiting. I want to target those who may not necessarily have the money, come from a broken home, come from domestic violence, may have been in a shelter. I want to award scholarships to those individuals. And so we have seen last year we had 2 valedictorians. One was the first Black valedictorian of Capitol High School. One of our scholarship recipients is now on our board. She is now a graduate of Tennessee State University. One of our scholarships was the seed money. She's now getting her doctorate degree. And so I want to be what I didn't have, but I also want to give back to a state and a community that gave me so much. A lot of times, and I share this in my bio, a lot of times we're in escape from here mode. Escape from here being West Virginia. We're in escape from here mode. I was in escape from here mode. I got this little boy on my hip and I'm like, I'm getting the heck out of here because ain't nothing but trauma here. And I realized God dealt with me that you got to give back what you got from there. the good things, the community that nurtured me, the community that raised me, the community that celebrated me. You can't always just remember the bad things that happened, because there was a lot of good things that happened. And so it is up to me to give back. And I want to say that to somebody that might be watching. You're waiting for somebody else to do it, and God said you can do it. You might not have all the resources. Listen, I quit my job. I didn't have no money to stop no nonprofit giving out over $30,000 in scholarships. But what I know about my God is that if I'm obedient, he will provide the resources. And he has provided the resources upwards of $30K and more of scholarships to deserving rising high school seniors. And I want to give a shout out to Keisha again. Last year, I didn't want to do the usual applicants for scholarships. So I reached out to Keisha, and I was like, Keisha, listen, I know you work with the youth. I want you to handpick kids that may not have the best grades. They may have the best grades, but they're just good kids at their core. And we are going to give scholarships to those kids. And I shouldn't say kids, those young adults. And we're in the process right now of selecting our trailblazers. We always need donations. You can go to the West Virginia Black Excellence website, and there's a donate now. Everything counts. Everything counts. But again, I will say just a shout out to some of our trailblazers from the past. They have given back. So they were honored as trailblazers. I was William Harding, lawyer, Woody Wood, who was one of the personalities on the radio station in West Virginia. I know I'm so many people that I'm forgetting that are trailblazers that have given back. Timothy Taylor, which is Tasha's father, he gave us a check just standing there, like $2,500. But we are always in need of funds to make sure that we can get more scholarships.
And I also say TC Carter.
Yes, TC. Listen, TC Carter is amazing, and she doesn't like to be recognized. But anytime there's a need in West Virginia, she always raises her hand. And that's the thing too, I want to say. We don't like to choose the usual trailblazers. We like to choose those who want to be behind the scene, and they don't necessarily want to, well, they don't want the praise and the applause. So those are the trailblazers. And trailblazers to me are people that have forged a path. They've knocked down a tree so that me and you can skip down the path. And so that's the kind of trailblazers we look to honor every year.
So Tracy, we've had 3 call to actions today, right? Let me start them out. First call to action, I said, before we start this podcast today, I need 15 folks to join on before we even begin. We got that. We had another call to action. The next call to action was go to Smoot Ave, find them on Facebook, find them on Instagram, like their page. Here's the last call of action right now. Go to westvirginiablackexcellence.org. As they say in church, if it's a penny, if it's $1, whatever your heart may desire, right? I don't know nobody's finances, and it ain't my place to know them. Somebody needs you, right? Go to westvirginiablackexcellence.org. Push that donate button and know that your blessing will later be a blessing for you.
Absolutely. Every penny goes back to the scholarship recipients. We don't retain a single penny for administrative costs, for nothing. Every penny goes back into the scholarship fund.
So as we are getting closer to the end of this particular episode, because we can keep going, right? But I want to be respectful of people's time. People got to work in the morning, right? People may still have to eat their dinner. But before we leave today, Tracy, I want to ask you, I'm going to only ask for one, right? Because I know there's many. What is one heart-to-heart message that you would leave our audience today?
I think the most important thing, the thing that resonates with me the most is God wastes nothing. He wastes nothing. What you go through, what you've gone through, what you are to go through is not just for you. We sometimes adopt this really selfish mindset that what we're going through is just for us, but it's for somebody else. Because once you see, you now see. And let me just dig deeper on that. Once you see and you have been made aware, for example, of domestic violence, you now see people who are in domestic violence. And so God doesn't waste nothing. He's a very strategic God. And so the things that he teaches us, whether it's food pantry, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's working with people to be seen, whatever it is, he wastes nothing. It's for your journey. It's for your journey. It's for somebody that you're going to meet on your journey. My grandmother used to always say, Janice Corbett, rest in peace. She always says, we entertain angels unawares. You can only be an angel if you are not wasting anything on your journey. I want to say one more thing. Don't suffer in silence.
Yes.
Don't suffer in silence. That is a trick of the enemy to make you think that you are the only one going through something, that you won't come out of it, that where you are right now is where you'll be forever. That is a trick of the enemy. And so I just want to encourage somebody, anybody, to not suffer in silence. If there's one person, if there's one nugget, reach out, humble yourself. And I guarantee you, God sends resources through people. So the answer to your prayer, most of the time, is around you. It'll make me emotional. The answer to your prayer is a lot of times around you. You just have to be still enough to hear them and surrendered enough to receive it. And so I learned that lesson on my journey. Be still enough to hear him and surrendered enough to receive what he has for you. And so that is my message. He wastes nothing. Every tear, every heartache, every broken place, he wastes nothing. What you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. As long as you are sitting on your testimony, nobody else can get free. So share your testimony and don't be ashamed of sharing your testimony. Here I am being just blatantly honest with you because I realized what I went through was for such a moment and such a time as this. So I thank you, Keisha, for just reaching out, like, hey, you be on this podcast. Nothing is by accident because he wastes nothing. This moment, this intersection, whoever's watching, you're on here because you're supposed to be on here. He's strategic. He stopped you and you're driving, you're cooking, you're being with your boo to hear something that you need for the journey. You might not need it today, but put it in your toolbox. And when you get into that place, because you will get in that place, hopefully you will remember something that was said today. So I want to say thank you, Keisha, because I don't take it for granted that you could have asked anybody to be on here, but you asked me, and I am so grateful and so humble for the opportunity to share my journey.
Tracy, I want to thank you for being very transparent in sharing your journey. And something resonated with me that I want to also add to what you said. The old taboo, the mindset that many of us that may be watching today or listening have heard. What goes on in the house stays in the house. Throw that in the trash.
Please.
Right? Put that in your trash receptacle. Put that in your what's those things you got in your sink, your food things,
disposal.
Disposals. Get rid of it. Right? Because what I always say is if we keep what goes on in the home, that's where domestic violence happens. That's where depression sets in. That's where anxiety sets in. So again, I'm not saying that none of our families meant us any wrong by telling us that. That's all they know. That's all they knew, right? They stated to us what was stated to them. But we have to change our mindset. What goes on in the home can't continue to be in the home because there's somebody outside your home that's there to help you. So along with what Tracy said, I'm going to add on to that again to say, please throw that old mindset away. And I know sometimes it's not easy to break old habits. I get it. Yep. I've done it, right? I'm a counselor by trade. I've raised kids. I've told my kids that, but there came a point to where I realized we must break the cycle.
Yes.
We must not allow generational curses to continue to be a part of our life. And if we don't know it any other time, the way our world is being situated right now, we better say it, right? We better talk about it. We better get out what we're really going through, because right now we need each other to make it through what we're going through in this world today. Because what we're seeing, some of us ain't never seen before. What we're experiencing, some of us ain't never experienced before. So what goes on in the home, we must take it outside the house, because there's somebody that can help you get through whatever it is that you're getting through alongside of your higher power.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Tracy, thank you so much for being very transparent.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting people know that who they see and what they see and what Tracy's been through. So through all your big hats, your beautiful glasses, all of your clothes, we must all know this. When all of that comes off, what's on the inside is what we're dealing with. So you can be as pretty as you want to be on the inside. On the outside, you can be made up the best that you want to be, but start working on the inside, because that's where the healing begins. And that's how we break the cycles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely.
So for all of my, I'm sorry, Tracy.
I said, we got to break the cycle.
We have to break the cycle. And I see all kind of comments today with people saying we have to break the cycle. And again, because hurt people. And we got to stop hurting people, because sometimes we already hurting ourselves, right? And we need help. We all need help in some capacity. But what I want to say to all of my listeners is thank you for taking time out on this Sunday to be a part of this episode. As I stated in the beginning, just in case some were coming on late, Heart to Heart with Keisha B is a podcast that talks about grief, healing, and overcoming unforeseen circumstances. And for most Sundays, just about every week, I'll do a bonus episode. So that's what this is here. This is a bonus episode where it will always be live. It'll be broadcast on my Facebook page as well as on my YouTube page. Then every Wednesday, I will drop another episode. It will not be live. So if you wish to continue to follow Heart to Heart with Keisha B, you can follow me on my social media platforms, which is Heart to Heart with Keisha B on Facebook, as well as my personal page, which is Lakeisha Barron Brown. You can also find me on YouTube on Heart to Heart with Keisha B. You can also listen to this episode and previous episodes and future episodes on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or wherever else you may listen to your podcast episodes as you're cooking, driving, whatever it is. If you just need moments of inspiration, know that's what Heart to Heart with Keisha B is all about. So again, audience, I want to thank you all for engaging and being part of this episode today.
I see a lot of the cousins in there. Hey, cousins.
Thank you for tuning into Heart to Heart with Keisha B. Remember, grief may shape our journey, but it doesn't define who we are. Healing is not a straight path, but with every step forward, you're creating space for hope, strength, and new beginnings. If today's episode brought you comfort or clarity, share it with someone who might need it too. Let's continue building this community of compassion and resilience together. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your soul. Honor your journey and always know that brighter days are ahead. I am Keisha B, and this has been Heart to Heart.